So, here's a question for you. How does a search for the perfect paradise, a modern-day Eden, go so horribly wrong that it ends in mysterious disappearances, suspicious deaths, and a crime that, to this day, has never been solved? All right, let's get right into it. Our story kicks off on Floreana. It's this remote, and back then, totally uninhabited island in the Galápagos. And we're not talking about a tropical paradise here. This place was so harsh that Charles Darwin himself basically said it was unfit for life. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, right? And yet that's exactly where a German doctor named Friedrich Ritter and his partner, Dore Strauch, decided to set up shop in 1929. They had this huge, very specific dream. They wanted to escape what Ritter called the impersonal monster of society. Their goal? To create their own perfect philosophical utopia. Just the two of them. But, well, it didn't quite work out that way. Within just 5 years, this supposed paradise became the setting for something straight out of an Agatha Christie novel. Seriously, we've got a cast of super eccentric characters, a really bitter feud, and a whole series of events that people are still arguing about today. So you gotta wonder, what would drive someone to do something so extreme? Let's back up a little and look at how this whole idea of a philosopher's Eden even got started. Okay, so this was all driven by Dr. Friedrich Ritter. He was a physician, a big fan of the philosopher Nietzsche, and he truly believed that modern civilization was just a corrupting force that you had to escape. And this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing either. Nope, he had been planning this getaway for 20 years. So he and his partner, Doris Strauch, who was also one of his patients, by the way, they left everything behind, and I mean everything. They both abandoned their spouses back in Germany and went all in on this new life. And when I say all in, listen to this. To make sure he wouldn't have any dental problems on the island, Ritter had every single one of his teeth pulled out and replaced with a set made of stainless steel. Yeah, that's commitment. Once they got to the island, it was tough. They worked the super unforgiving land, often completely naked because of the heat. The newspapers back home had a field day calling them Adam and Eve. But Ritter himself said it wasn't quite right. They were more like an Adam and Eve in boots, because they had to wear them to protect their feet from the sharp volcanic rock. And, their relationship was hardly a paradise either. Ritter could be really critical and cold, and Dora Straw found herself feeling more and more lonely out there. The funny thing is, Ritter picked Floreana specifically because it was so harsh. He figured nobody in their right mind would follow them there, but their letters home got picked up by the press, and suddenly they became these accidental celebrities. And, well, you can guess what happened next. They weren't going to be alone for long. First up, in 1932, were the Whitmers. They were a pretty normal German family, just hoping the island life would be healthier for their son. Ritter was not pleased. He basically saw them as superficial intruders messing up his grand philosophical project. But as disruptive as he found them, they were nothing compared to who showed up next. The real catalyst for all the chaos was just about to arrive. And here she is, Baroness Eloise von Wagner, an extremely eccentric Austrian who shows up with not one, but two German lovers. And get this, from the second she steps on the island, she declares herself the ruler, the Empress of Floreana. You can't make this stuff up. Now, the Baroness's vision for the island was the complete opposite of Ritter's. She wasn't interested in philosophy. She wanted to build a luxury hotel, a kind of Miami of the Galápagos. She was loud, she was flamboyant, she carried a pistol, and she made enemies with, pretty much everyone real fast. She was especially cruel to one of her lovers, Rudolf Lorenz, treating him like a slave and even beating him in front of the others. The tension on this tiny little island was it was a powder keg waiting to explode. And then, in 1934, it felt like nature itself decided to just turn up the heat. A really brutal drought hit the island. Water and food became incredibly scarce. And this already fragile social experiment, it just started to completely and violently fall apart. And when it unraveled, it happened fast. I mean, shockingly fast. In just 9 months, Floreana went from being a tense, awkward little community to a full-blown crime scene. 2 people vanished, another one died a horrible death trying to escape, and to top it all off, the guy who started the whole thing, he wound up dead too. So who went first? The Baroness and her favorite lover, Philipson. They just disappeared. The only person who claimed to know anything was Lorenz, the lover she always abused. His story? Oh, they just packed their bags and sailed off to Tahiti on a yacht that happened to be passing by. Sounds plausible, right? Except for one huge problem. Nobody else on the island saw any yacht. And it gets even more suspicious. The Baroness left behind nearly all of her personal stuff, things you'd think she'd definitely take with her. Dore Strauch was sure they'd been murdered. Of course, the prime suspect was Lorenz. But people also started pointing fingers at Ritter, who absolutely despised the Baroness, and even at the quiet Whitmer family. The truth is, we just don't know. Their bodies have never, ever been found. Just a few months after that, the mystery got even deeper. Dr. Ritter, the man who started it all, was dead. The official story, coming from Dore and Strauch, was simple: food poisoning. But Margaret Whitmer, the mom of the other family, well, she told a completely different story. A much, much more sinister one. Okay, so according to Dore Strauch, here's what happened. The drought had wiped out their food, and Ritter, who was a super strict vegetarian, finally ate some spoiled chicken because he was desperate. Her story ends with him dying peacefully in her arms as she read philosophy to him. It's a very tidy, almost poetic ending. But Margaret Whitmer's version is a horror story. She claimed that when she got there, Ritter wasn't peaceful at all. He was in agony. And his last words weren't some philosophical reflection. No, she says he used his last breath to accuse Dore Strauch of poisoning him, writing down the words, "I curse you with my last breath." And that right there, that's the whole mystery in a nutshell. Two witnesses, two totally opposite stories. Who do you believe? So in the end, with the Baroness vanished and Ritter dead, only two of the original groups were left on the island, and one of them was about to pack their bags. Dore Strauch got out of there almost immediately after Ritter died. She went back to Germany and eventually published her side of the story. The Whitmers, on the other hand, they stayed. They actually put down roots. And believe it or not, their descendants still live on Floreana today and run a hotel. It wasn't until decades later, in 1959, that Margaret Whitmer finally published her own book, the one that directly challenged Strauch's story and pretty much guaranteed this mystery would never, ever be solved. I mean, it's no surprise that this incredible story, it's got everything, philosophy, drama, death in paradise, has totally captured people's imaginations for decades. It's been turned into tons of books, a really fantastic documentary, and now it's even getting the big Hollywood movie treatment. So, what are we supposed to make of the whole Galápagos affair? Is it just a tragic reminder that you can't really escape human nature no matter how far you run? Or is it something darker? Proof that if you have enough isolation and enough ambition, maybe you can actually get away with the perfect crime. Whatever the truth is, the ghosts of Floreana certainly aren't talking.